Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths, your community for the spiritually awakened, where we discuss, explore, and connect with fellow empaths, healers, intuitives, and seekers. Hello and welcome to Enlightened Empaths. I hope you guys are having a great start to your week. How about you, Denise?
I am. We're having the shift of seasons, which I think there's all kinds of energy around that. So forward from here.
Yes, and as we're recording this, it's almost a full moon and Mercury is fully out of its shadow phase. So we're hopefully heading into lighter energy for the lighter weather of fall. What do you think?
Yes. It's interesting that you call it the lighter weather. And in other parts of the country, we say, ooh, it's it's lighter energy, different weather.
That's true. I just mean the heaviness of the humidity in summer.
True. And it was a rough Mercury retrograde for a lot of people. And the shadow for a lot of folks was even stronger than the actual retrograde. It was rugged.
Yeah, I read a bunch of stuff about that shadow thing, and I never have really felt that before, except this one I definitely did.
Yeah, this one was but we made it through as always, and we're just gonna see what comes next with an open heart and a curious mind.
Yeah,
Sounds good, huh?
it sure does. Well, the topic for today's show is a little bit heavier than that lighter energy. I announced briefly on my other podcast, Psychic Teachers, that my mom had passed, and I've been inundated with so many emails and messages and beautiful comments. And I just want to thank everyone for taking time to, share your condolences with me. I really appreciate that. I've tried to respond to all of them, but if I haven't gotten to you, know that I am reading each and every one of them, and I appreciate it. And I thought it would just be interesting to discuss how different it is when people die in our lives, and how some of us, when we get to the other side, are capable of giving us signs and others not so much, and why that is. Because I think as mediums, Denise, don't you find that a lot of people will come to us and they'll say, gosh, I was so close to my grandmother and I haven't heard a peep from her. And there's some hurt feelings when that happens, right? And yet I think what you and I have come to realize is it doesn't mean, oh, your grandma's in heaven, like dancing and having fun and not thinking of you. It really depends on their personality and how they died, and kind of how open they were to this world of spirituality before they passed. All of that, I feel, kind of primes the pump for how well they'll be able to pass on signs.
I agree. And also where you are in your own grief journey, where you are in the process, we may want to get a sign so badly that we're missing something that might be a little bit more subtle.
Oh, that is so true. And if we're heavily grieving, we will put up those barriers, and that can make it incredibly difficult.
Exactly.
So the process with my mom passing was so quick, and yet not quick, if that makes sense. It all felt very, very sudden. And ironically, or maybe not ironically, it did kind of start with a dream. The last week of August. Well, let me back up. So people might not know, my father passed away 16 months ago. And never in my wildest dreams did I think I would lose both my parents in such a short amount of time.
Right.
We've heard from so many listeners who have lost both parents that quickly, and you think, gosh, that's got to be tough. But I never thought, actually, to be honest, I just thought my mom would outlive us all, because she was so strong and feisty. So I just couldn't imagine it. And she did have COPD at the end of her life and was on an oxygen tank. And, we had a caregiver there 6 days a week. And my sister and I were providing all of her meals and, all that caretaking stuff. But she was doing fine and mentally was completely all there, and, was still enjoying life to the extent that you can with an oxygen tank. And the last week of August, my youngest daughter, who I always say is way more psychic than, anyone I know, had a dream that my dad was in the back room of my house, which was his favorite room in my home. And he was pacing, and he said to Chloe, I need to go for a drive. I need to talk. I need to think. which is exactly what my dad would do when I was growing up. If he was ever worried about something, he'd go, come on, get in the car. Let's go for a drive. And I never had shared that with my kids. Those are those little minutia of your childhood that, you don't really talk about. So I thought it was interesting that she mentioned that in the dream. So she says, okay, fine, Papa. So they get in the car and they drive. And he said, uh, my kids called my mom Gigi. And he said, Gigi, they tell me that Gigi's getting ready to come over, but they won't tell me when. And I have so much to do to prepare. And
Oh,
yeah. And when Chloe told me that dream, I was like, what? Like, Gigi's not going anywhere. She's fine. She's fit as a fiddle. She's pissed off at Kanye for what he's doing in Italy. She's keeping, I mean, she was on top of things. Do you know what I mean? Like,
mm-hmm.
I was just like, what the heck? And that very week, she started sleeping like 15 to 18 hours a day. Like we could not wake her up. Remember that day I told you I had to like go over there and wake her up?
Yes. Yes, I do.
And we couldn't figure out what was wrong. So we called her doctor, and the doctor called me back and said, I'm putting in a call for hospice to come do a check. And I was like, hospice? Like, I'm still in shock about all of that. You think hospice is like, oh, stage 4 this, or, something really serious. But my mom had been on an oxygen tank for over a year. Blood pressure was fine. We checked her oxygen levels every day. Everything was fine. And the hospice nurse came Labor Day weekend. And after 20 minutes of evaluating, my mom said, okay, I'm approving you for at-home hospice. And boom, they delivered the hospital bed. They delivered all this stuff to our house. And we had a CNA coming 3 times a week to help bathe my mom, and all these services just overnight. It was just kind of overwhelming.
Mm-hmm.
And then one Saturday, the caregiver was at my mom's house, and my mom said, I can't breathe. And the caregiver called 911, and they took my mom to the ER. And my sister and I rushed over there, and we're sitting in the ER with my mom. And my mom kept saying, I'm dying. I know I'm dying. And I was like, no, you're not. I'm like, Mom, you're going to be fine. They're going to put an IV fluid through you. You're going to be fine. And the ER doctor came in and said, hello, Mrs. Owen, you're doing great. You do have some fluid trapped in your lungs. I think he called it a pulmonary effusion. And he said, so we're going to flush that out and then we can send you home. And I was like, see, Mom, you're going to be fine. And I asked him some questions like, well, what's going to happen when she comes home at night? Because, we have the caregiver there during the day, but I thought, gosh, what if this happens at night? Like, who should I call? Should I call 911 again? Should I call hospice again? And he said, let me get the hospice people over here, the nurse on call, and to talk to you. So she comes into the room a little bit later, and she goes, I'm so sorry I'm late getting to you guys. Ironically, I was just with a patient named Mr. Owen.
Oh my.
And I just thought, okay, dad is here and he's overseeing this, and I'm just gonna surrender this process, because what are the odds?
Mm-hmm.
It's not an unusual last name, but it's not a common one.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, she's looking at my mom's stuff, and she says, I really don't want to send her home. Some of these lab results aren't looking great. Let me see if there's a bed across the street at the hospice center. And my sister and I are looking at each other like, we're still in shock that hospice is even connected to my mom at this point, and then not sending her home. We were like, what's happening? And she says, she types away, click, clack, click, clack. Oh my gosh, there's one bed available. And it was so fast. Do you ever have when things like that happen and it's just kind of overwhelming?
Yes.
And this whole time, my mom, I don't know if they had her on morphine at that point or not, but she was not awake and aware as all of this is going on around her. And so the hospice nurse leaves and she says, oh, the transfer people will be here soon. And we're just sitting there, not like trying to process all of this. And all of a sudden, my mom popped open her eyes and she said, where's Samantha? And I said, Mom, I'm here. I'm right here. And I jump up and grabbed her hand. And she said, I love you. I've always loved you. I pray for you every day, and I will watch out for you from the other side.
Oh,
Yeah, clear as a bell.
oh, that's
And
beautiful.
it was so beautiful. And so, of course, I broke down and said all the things I needed to say to her. And as soon as I was done with that, the transfer people came in, the paramedics came in to take her. And it was so funny because did I tell you this part? How the guy was so handsome and the girl was so adorable?
No.
Okay. So of course my mom pops open her eyes again and goes, "You're so handsome." So they transfer her over to hospice, and it was a beautiful room. Have you ever had to deal with that
It's
situation?
I have, and when it's done well, it's a very gentle sanctuary kind of an experience.
Yeah, I was very impressed. My mom had French doors leading out to like an enclosed garden with a porch swing. Like it was very, very, very nice. And they were all incredibly lovely to us. And we just sat vigil, that terrible, terrible time where you're just sitting and watching and waiting. And they had her on so much stuff. She really wasn't very conscious most of that day. But the next day we started bringing in the grandkids and stuff to say goodbye to her. And she was very aware of that. She would open her eyes, she would wake up. She kept doing that reaching thing.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really interesting. Um, and it was just nice because we were able to say everything we needed to say. I was able to get into a little routine. I would say the rosary with her every morning and every night. And I think that brought her a lot of comfort. I know at the end, all she did was pray to Mother Mary, like the last 6 months. That's all she talked about. She'd say, "The Blessed Mother and I talked today."
Oh,
So I thought that was a really nice thing to do. It was funny though, because the hospice doctor said to me one morning, she said, some people live, no, she said, some people die easy and some people die hard. And I'm going to tell you right now, your mom is going to die hard.
oh,
Yeah. She was very, you know, concise, should we say, with her words.
mm-hmm.
And I thought, how interesting is that? I wonder if some of us die as we lived.
Oh, that's a lot to think about.
Do you know what I mean, though? Like, if I feel like, my mom always made things hard for
Mm-hmm.
herself. And I wonder if, I don't know, I thought that was so interesting that she said that. And I think the hardest part of the whole process was on Monday. My sister and I were just doing that vigil, and it was so awkward. And by the time like 6:30 came around, I was like, we're just like scrolling through the internet, we're checking our email, we're holding mom's hand. And finally I looked at her and I said, "I feel like we're just staring at her, waiting for her to die. Like, I hate this." And she said, "I do too." And I said, "And I'm starving and I haven't seen my daughter all day." So we went to grab a bite to eat, and I went home with my daughter, and I couldn't sit like all week. I don't know. I just haven't been able to sit still, when you're just in that state.
Yes.
I mean, my house is so clean right now, Denise. So he said, "Chloe, let's bake cookies to bring to the hospice nurses." And she was like, "Okay." So it's like, I don't know, 8:39 at this point. We baked our chocolate chip cookies, and we're waiting for the last batch to come out, and we're watching the middle on TV. I passed out on the couch, completely fell asleep. And my plan was to make the cookies and go back to the hospice center at like 10 o'clock and just, be there with mom. Fell asleep. And I guess, Chloe was like, "You need to go to bed." And my mom died that night. Isn't that always the way? Like when you're planning to be there and you're not, and then they go.
Right. And I had heard years ago that many people want to pass alone. They don't want to leave that memory, and whether there's validity to that or not. But I'm glad that your mom was able to speak with you and share her heart, and that you were able to speak your truth, and that everyone was able to go and see her. That's a beautiful, beautiful gift.
Yeah, it really was. And everything just, from there worked out pretty effortlessly. We had a great person helping us plan the services, all of that worked out. Of course, on the day of my mom's funeral, it was a tropical storm.
Mm-hmm.
We thought, well, okay, this is apropos. But all of that went really, really well. And each my sisters and I each gave a eulogy. And so, all of that was very, very nice. But and all the people came to the house, there's all of that. And finally, everyone leaves at like 10 o'clock. So it was a long day, long, long day, long night. And everyone's gone, and it's just my sisters and me and our families. And Courtney said, Mom, you've got to give us a sign. And if anyone can give us a sign that you made it and you're okay, it's you. So you got to give us a sign. And we were talking like, what could the sign be? You know what I mean? Like what could it be? And here's something weird about the last 2 months of my mom's life. This bird would come to her back door and just hit it with its beak every day. It got to the point where like the caregiver or Courtney or we'd video it because we just couldn't believe it. And I've heard if a bird flies into the house, that's an old wives' tale. Have you ever heard about a bird knocking on the window or the door?
I have, yes.
Is
And
that also?
I don't know what the lore is connected with it, but it's hard not to personify the bird when that happens because it seems like it's a direct, hey, hey, pay attention, I'm right here.
Yeah, and it was weird because the whole time this would happen, and it was almost daily, it was like angry, like it was trying to get into the house.
Oh,
Yeah, it was weird. So I said, well, why don't we ask her to have a bird like, just get our attention or knock on our window or door? And she was like, well, I don't know. That's kind of like that kind of upset. I don't know. Let me think about that. I'm like, okay. So the next day, I'm in bed asleep. And my sister texted me. It's like 7 a.m. And she said, did you do the Wordle? And I said, no, not yet. I just woke up. And she said, check it out. And so the Wordle of the day was Carol, my
oh,
mom's name.
that's good. That's a good hit.
That's a really good sign. I was like, Mom, look at you. And here's the thing we were talking about, like, I don't even know how to use Carol in a sentence because you'll say like, oh, we went Christmas caroling, or I love to listen to Christmas carols. But
Mhm.
carol singular, it's not a very common word,
True.
you know? So I just thought it was so interesting that the very next day we had that. And then my friend who is very, very religious and just doesn't really talk about what I do for a living and just kind of walks around all the crystals in my home, she came over to bring some food. And we're standing in my kitchen, and I have this big window in my kitchen, and I have these red flowers that are growing there. And this hummingbird comes up to the window and hits the window.
Oh,
And I didn't want to say anything in front of my friend to be like, oh, it's a sign, because
hmm,
I just don't want to like throw my beliefs in someone, you know what I mean?
right.
So
Be respectful.
yeah, so I'm just listening to her and talking and totally making note of the hummingbird. And she stops and says, Samantha, that hummingbird has paid zero attention to those red flowers. It's just like staring at us in the window. I think it's a sign from your mom.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's big.
I know. I was like if you had said that or Deb had said that, I'd be like, yeah, I think it is too. And it would still be cool. But the fact that, she said it, I don't know, it highlighted it even more.
Again, give credit to your mom. She's showing up.
Yeah, she really is. And so soon. And
Hmm.
so I just wanted to, talk about those stories because it hasn't even been a week. But I wanted to talk about those stories because when my dad passed away, we didn't get any of that. And it really bothered me because he and I were so, so close. And I didn't know if it was because he died with Alzheimer's. And so that, you need time to heal and drop all of that. I
Mhm.
didn't know if it was because we were so close and I couldn't stop crying for so long. I didn't know what it was. But it's interesting because my dad did not have a psychic bone in his body. And my mom was incredibly psychic. I think I might have shared this on another show. Growing up, my mom said there was a bluebird named Petro that she would talk to, and she would send Petro to talk to, like, follow us and check on us at school. And then I'd come home from school and she'd be like, "Oh, Petro told me a boy talked to you today," or "Petro told me you ordered chocolate milk. I told you too much sugar in that. You got to order the white milk." Like little things. "Petro told me you had a quiz today." And I thought my mom was magical. And I truly believed in this damn bird named Petro for way too long. And finally, when I was in high school, she was like, "No, I just kind of know things." I don't think she
Mhm.
ever used the word psychic, but anyway, so she always just knew stuff. She always knew stuff about people and about us and what was going on in our lives. And I wonder if having that natural ability helps you in the afterlife to be able to traverse whatever the wall is between us and the other side. What do you think?
I think yes, but I also have known really, really psychic people who have taken a long time to come through. So I wonder if it is maybe, and this is kind of a random, but because you were all able to, she left having spoken her truth and telling you that she loved you, and she heard that you all loved her, and there was time to. Uh, it wasn't whereas with your dad, you didn't have that same gift. I wonder if there's anything to that. I don't know.
I don't know either. And that is interesting to think about. If she had maybe been thinking about this for a long time, because there were months and months, and she'd say, "Samantha, you're psychic. Am I dying? When am I going to die?" And
Hmm.
she'd say, the Blessed Mother says I'm not dying this year. Is that true?" She was always focused on that. And I'd say, "Mom, why are you afraid to die?" And
Right.
she'd say, "Because I don't know what's waiting for me. I don't know if there's anything waiting for me." And I would tell her stories of what I had learned through doing readings. I would share books with her, Visions, Trips, and Crowded Rooms, for example. And still she was like, "I don't know." There was always that little nugget of doubt.
Hmm.
And I think a lot of people face that at the end of their life, don't you?
Very much so. Yes. And it's, I think when someone has a devout religious practice, when those doubts come in, that it adds a whole other layer to it.
Yeah, I agree. I 100% agree. So something else that really surprised me through this process, I work for myself, so that's I'm very grateful for that. But my sister doesn't. I didn't know that most companies only give you 3 to 4, some give 5 days for bereavement when you lose a parent. But there's no law stipulating that any company has to give you time off when you lose a family member. Did you know that?
Yes, because I was working with when both of my parents passed, and uh I got 5 days, I got a week. Well, 5 days of a work week. Which
I
you're
just
right, you're not ready. It's too much. But that's our culture and society here in the States anyway.
Yeah, that just sad.
Hmm. Because we both know grief isn't a one and done.
No, no, it is a many layered process. So I wonder if that is true. It's got to be just true in America, right? Because I feel like other cultures handle death so much better. It's not as clinical.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I know that, just in the historical part, in a very, very, very short time, historically, we've gone from doing a wake in the front room and family coming to visit to what it's become very clinical. And in a historical perspective, that's very, very quickly. So what, 50 years, maybe a little bit longer, when they used to keep the family members at home and they would, do all that stuff. So we've just changed things so much that, and there's a woman that I'm going to do a bonus episode with coming up next month, who is a grief counselor. And we've talked about this a lot. And she's talked about, we need to normalize the process of passing as just another aspect of being alive.
And yet no one wants to talk about it. I talked about it with my mom a lot this summer, and I would say, is there, like, one of the things I was tasked with doing this week was choosing the outfit she'd be buried in.
Mm-hmm.
And I had asked her, what do you want to be buried in? And she was like, oh, I don't want to talk about that. I don't want to talk about that. And, as I was standing in her closet, I was thinking, oh, mom, like, if you had just told me, I wouldn't be agonizing over this decision right now, And it's like, and the mortuary director was like, what kind of music do you want? And I was like, I don't know. I mean, I know she liked Ave Maria, but I don't know, because we just never talked about it.
But
And
it's also that I think the shock of losing someone close to us, many of us, we blank out. I'm sure as time goes by, you'll say, "Oh my gosh, she loved that type of music," or it comes back. But in the moment, it's really, really hard to pull all that together. And I know that there's a friend of mine, her mom lived well into her 90s, and she very, very, very Catholic woman. And she had it scripted. She wanted it, which priest she wanted, what snacks she wanted, I mean, the whole thing. And that was very, very important to her. And I think when you can hand that list over to someone and say, no, not those snacks, these snacks, and I want it in this rectory, and I want it. I mean, there's some peace to that.
there really is, and we need to do it, because otherwise, your kids or your partner is left making all of these decisions, and it's kind of frightening, because you're like, well, would they like that? Would they not like that? I don't know. I do think that she would have liked the coffin we chose. It's called
Mhm.
Champagne Gold, and it's lined in cashmere.
Oh my.
So I felt very good about that. But yeah, all of those things you have to think about. My dad hadn't really given us a lot of instruction, but he had written most of his obituary,
Mm-hmm.
and that was very helpful. But all of those things, you do need to think about, and you do need to talk about. And I
And
wonder I just wonder, like, why so many people. I'm not afraid to talk about it with my kids. Like, I've told them exactly what I want,
mm-hmm.
um, and where I want to be, and all of that. Um, and I think they know all the different. We talked about the music. I'm like, what do you? And actually, when I asked them, they know me so well. They were like, oh, well, I would do this, this, and that. And I was like, yeah, that's exactly right. But I wonder if people don't want to talk about it because they fear death, or they fear leaving the people, or if they're afraid of upsetting their kids. I don't know.
I think all of the above. I think there is a very deep fear, rather than, as I mentioned a minute ago, rather than seeing it as a process of life that we'll all come to. We all get this. We all have the experience one way or another. And I do think there is, but how is, just looking at the culture of the US again, the obsession, the absolute ridiculous obsession with stay as young as possible, don't age, don't look your age, don't act. I mean, it has to go hand in hand a little bit, I would think,
Yeah.
rather than a reverence for, the old wisdom, or becoming the crone, or, check with your grandfather, he knows all, he's done this for so many years. We've lost that respect for our elderly, or our yes, it is, it's our elders, it's the people who stepped before us, out of this ridiculous fear of, I have to look younger, act younger, be younger. That's
Yeah.
just my opinion. I don't know if
No,
there's a
I think
correlation or not.
I definitely think there's a correlation to that. I think there's also this weird inability to contemplate death. Like I'm still walking around. I drive past my mom's house every day. It's on my way to every, she lived right down the road from me, so I have to pass it. And I drive past it and I'm like, I can't believe she's not in there.
Yeah.
Like, and then I'm like, that's so stupid. You knew this was coming one day. But there's something in our brain, I think, that doesn't really allow us to contemplate the finality of it all.
Hmm.
And I
And
think, go ahead.
I was just going to say, a dear friend said this to me years ago, many, many years ago, and she said, when you lose both your parents, you go into this stage of feeling a bit like an orphan. And I thought, well, that doesn't make sense, but there is, because you've become the elder. There's not a generation above you anymore.
Oh,
And
yeah,
I
we're
think,
right at the top of the line.
yeah, and that changes perspective and understanding. And I did, for me anyway. I don't know if it does for everyone, but there is you're right. When you drive by, or you'll see the same kind of car she always drive go by, and do a double take, like, oh my God, I think she just drove by me. I think that there's something in our brain that is trying to help us process.
I remember when my mom's mom died, my mom would still call her. Like she'd come home from something and she'd dial the phone and then she'd go, "Oh, she's gone." It was like
Hmm.
she would forget.
Yeah.
And then the grief would start all over for her. And that was really, really hard. I think I'm more practical about the grief, but it's interesting listening to other people telling me what to do.
Oh.
Do you know what I mean? Like some people are surprised that I'm working this week. I did take a week off and then I
Hmm.
went right back. And then other people are like, you need to take way more time off. And it's like, well, you know, what am I going to do? Sit around and be sad? I'd rather work and focus on the grief. Does that, you know what I mean?
Oh,
Like,
well, I think that there can be a comfort in the structure and the familiarity of a day, that you're going back into your routines, so you can function, so you can work through this.
mhm, yeah.
And
And we still have to close out her house and all of that stuff. And so that's going to, we've started that a little bit. Um, all my older sister was home too with all the grandkids and niece, so that was a whole family. And we went through a bunch of stuff. And that's, it's a lot. And that's going to be a process. And I think that's a good time to grieve too. But you read these books or you see these movies where they take like a year off to live in their mom's house and get rid
hmm.
of it. And I'm like, first of all, who has the damn luxury for that, right?
Hmm.
And
True.
secondly, I don't know that I want to focus on it day in and day out for a year. I'd rather work and then fill that, you know, spend my weekends doing that. I don't know.
But you just made a really, really important point, Samantha, is that how you grieve is an individual choice that no one else gets a vote on. So you and your two sisters are probably processing this in different ways. You all
Mhm.
grew up together, you have the same parent, you had the same experience. But I think that's another whole part of, we've drifted into this world of, you have to do it this way in order to actually, and that doesn't make sense to me, because someone else may need to completely step away from the situation and become a little bit more hermetic, or someone else may need to volunteer every spare minute to help. It doesn't, not, I don't know, I just don't think one is right or wrong. It's just so individual to the grief process.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we have to respect how each person chooses to grieve,
Yes.
I think that's crucial. The other thing I've learned, not just from this experience, but from other difficult times in my life, is how important it is to show up. You
Mhm.
know, like when I was growing up, my parents were very private people. And they each had like one or two friends. And, my mom was involved in bridge and my dad was involved in AA, but we weren't like the open door house with parties and what, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
And I just didn't see my mom like bringing meals to neighbors. I didn't see her writing cards. I didn't see my parents showing up for other people. And so when I became an adult and things would happen, I remember thinking, like, should I show up? Am I close enough to that person to show up? Do you ever have thoughts like that? Like if someone's going through a difficult time or their parents in the hospital, do you ever think like, are they going to think it's weird if I show up, or have
Hmm.
I hit that threshold of friendship where it's expected that I show up, or
Right.
I don't know. And when my former husband was shot in the line of duty, that was the first time I learned, holy shit, how important it is to show up, because I couldn't have gotten through that without acquaintances, neighbors, coworkers, like, in addition to my close friends showing up. That meant everything to me. When I was going through breast cancer, my kids' teachers did so much for me. Meal trains and, in addition to my friends and my neighbors, and it was amazing. So, and then with my dad passing and now my mom passing, and just people sending beautiful cards and emails and flowers, and just letting you know that they're thinking of you, and showing up to the funeral or to the service after, like all of that matters so much more than the little kid in me ever thought it did.
Yes. That's all so, so, so very heartfelt and important.
Yeah, and so if anyone takes anything from this rambling I've done on this episode, I think a lot of us empaths are walking that line, where we're either total introverts or sometimes introverts. I think there's a shyness that's inherent in being an empath because we're such good observers and we're such good thinkers and sometimes overthinkers. And so it's taken me a long time to realize, don't overthink it, don't analyze it, don't question it. If someone's in need, just show up. However that looks to you. It could be a meal, it could be a card, it could be, offering to babysit their kids so they can focus on other things, anything that resonates for you. It's really important to show up, and when all the dust has settled, at least for me, I remember everyone who showed up. I really do. It just means a lot.
Right. And I think we do need to address people who may not have that support, that if you can ask for help, or please find some way to take care of yourself if you're not feeling that support in your community or with your family, because that's another whole aspect of grieving and getting through traumatic situations. And I think that please know that you're all in our heart and our prayers with that as well.
Yes, 100%. 100%. It's so important to, try to stay connected so that when you have those difficult times, you do have that support around you. And I think the more we are able to show up for other people, it's a boomerang. It all comes back around,
Yes.
you know?
And you made a really good point. Even though that wasn't modeled for you growing up, you made a conscious choice to say, I'm going to step a little bit out of my comfort zone and make sure that I do show up, that I do bring the meal or send the card, or check in and see how someone's doing. And I think this goes back to finding a way that it fits for you, what's in your comfort zone. And it may be everything counts. You're right. Everything counts, no matter what you choose to do to help support someone else.
Yeah, it really does. And I never really, I don't know, I always would second guess that. I remember my sister, when she owned a restaurant, she had this wonderful waitress and we all just loved her. She just made everybody laugh. She was young, she was 25, and she passed away in a car accident. And I wasn't friends with her. I didn't go out with her. I didn't talk on the phone with her. I just loved seeing her when I went to the restaurant, and I knew Michelle would make me smile and make me feel great. And I was in my 20s. I was right around her age, and she passed, and the funeral was like an hour away. And I remember saying to Courtney, am I stupid for like taking a day off work and going, is her mom going to look at me and be like, who the hell are you?
Mhm.
And she was like, no, 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 you loved her too. And so we all went, and I wrote a little card for the mom, and I just remember the mom hugging us all. And I remember her saying, for the rest of my life, I will look back on this and I will remember everyone who showed up for Michelle.
Oh,
And like that, I was so young then. I was just out of school and I remember thinking, oh, but it took me a long time to really learn that. I didn't know it in my teens. I didn't know it in college for sure.
mm-hmm. That's a very, very important point. You're right. Show up, share your heart, treat people the way you wish they'd treat you when you're going through a hard situation.
Yeah, totally. But also conversely, like we were saying before, people who didn't show up for me during those times, I don't judge them. Do you know what I mean? I'm
No,
not like, oh, you weren't there. Like I'm still friends with those people, because I understand some people can't handle that stuff.
exactly. That's so, so, so important. I'm glad you brought that up because we're seeing it all through our own filter
Hmm.
of what's right, what's wrong, how to grieve. So it's not you have to grieve this way or you have to show up for me this way, but it is more if it's we don't know someone else's story and they may just not know what to say or do. They just
Yeah.
might not know.
Yeah. And I don't think we should ever take that personally because a lot of people don't know how to handle those difficult situations. There's not a structure in place for some of those things. Like with the funeral, I do think there is a bit of a structure. You send a card, you send flowers, you bring a casserole over, whatever. But for some of the other stuff that happens in our life that's unexpected and out of the blue, there's not a manual for that. And some people just don't handle it well, and that's okay too. And I don't think anyone should feel hurt by the people who didn't show up for them.
I mean, I think this is a really beautiful, beautiful episode, especially since you've shared openly over the years that there was some tumultuous stuff with you and your mom, and the fact that she's showing up with signs, that you ended things on a beautiful note, that she's has the champagne casket with the I mean, that is all that's healing, that's love, that's presence. So even if it's something that might have been difficult, it's never too late to switch it into coming back to a place of love.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's not all roses and kittens and
No.
puppies. I think that when you have a difficult relationship with a parent, this is how I feel anyway. I feel like I've been grieving her my whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
grieving what could have been, what should have been. And so when this ultimate finality happened, it didn't hit me as hard as my dad's death because it was like, oh, yeah, this is what I've been grieving. It just felt normal. I don't know how to explain that. It felt what I've been feeling for a long time because I think when you don't have that close relationship with your mother, how many times have I said this, Denise? It's like walking around as an amputee. You can still get around, but there's something missing.
Mm-hmm.
There's something missing when you don't have that unconditional love from a mom. And, did I get it at the end? I don't know. Maybe. Did she try? She definitely did. Did that mean everything to me? 100%. Does it make all those other years go away? No.
Right.
But, I'm stubborn. I'm not a forgive and forget person. But I do love her dearly. I do wish that and pray and hope that she continues to give us signs so that I know she's with my dad and with her mom and her twin sister who passed away years ago. I'm so happy they're together again. She's there with her big brother. It's only her older sister that remains.
Mm-hmm.
And my mom died on her birthday.
On the older sister's birthday?
Yes,
Wow.
I know. So the whole family waited a day to tell her because.
That happens a lot
Does
close
it? Yeah, that's
close to
true.
birthdays. And often people will try to wait. They'll they'll wait for I've heard this countless times doing readings that people will say, oh, my son's birthday was the 5th, but my dad passed at 12:01 on the 6th, like the next day, just so
Mhm.
it wouldn't be that birthday.
Wow. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. That's
Yeah.
beautiful. Well, thank you guys for listening to, like I said, my rambling. It is a process. I feel like I've just started the difficult process of kind of unwrapping the tangled web of grief, but I am so happy that she and I had that beautiful, beautiful ending, and that she's already been able to give us signs that she did make it, that she is on the other side. Because, how many times have I joked she would probably stay around and haunt us just because, she was kind of nosy? I'm joking. I know people are listening to this going, man, this co host is such a cold bee.
No, 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 there's nothing cold. It's
That's
it's you're
just how
you,
I grieve.
yes.
But I do know that she has made it to the other side. And God, that is just so wonderful. Some of our favorite shows we've done are our signs from the other side that listeners have sent us. And I've gotten my own signs from, like my mother-in-law or my friend George, but to have a sign from your mom, I don't know, there's something way more deeply riching about that. I don't know what it is, but it felt it just felt almost like a miracle, like she's okay and she's already over there trying to let us know she's okay. It's a great help in the grief process. So I do hope everyone is able to get that sign. Sometimes we can't. Still haven't gotten my sign from my dad. I'm going to tell
Right.
my mom to make him give me the sign. But thank you guys so much for listening. And again, thank you for all your lovely emails. Um, and we hope you guys have a wonderful week. Anything you want
Yes.
to add?
No, no, I think, and thank you for sharing this with everyone, because it's not easy to go through the grieving process, and you just shared all of this with such dignity and grace and love. So thank you.
Oh, I hope so. Well, what do they say? A grief shared is a grief halved.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's important to talk about it. And I know listeners have followed my tumultuous journey with my mom through many, many episodes. And I've been fearing her passing for so long because I thought I would feel way worse, and I feel incredibly sad. But I think we were able to heal and prevent a lot of the guilt I thought I would feel, if that makes
Yes,
sense.
it makes
So
perfect sense.
it's just wonderful to be able to have that small sense of closure, that I knew who she was and she knew who I was at the end, and that's a gift. And I think we should all strive, towards having some type of closure. I don't know. Forget that I said that. I hate that word closure.
Okay.
Do you hate that word? I hate that word.
I think it's a loaded word.
It's a loaded word, yeah. But some type of joy on the end of a difficult path.
Oh, that's nice.
Okay, we'll end on that. All right.
Yes.
Thanks, guys, so much. As always, please remember to show up, do great work, and share your light.
Take care.